Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost. It's November something. It's November 15th. And this is our Friday community gathering. We've been doing these since April 17th, 2020. Um, they were originally a community service that we were offering as a way to help people get through shutdown and still have a feeling, a sense of community. And it had an interesting side effect for TRU. We're a small not-for-profit in New York, and suddenly we're global because 4 years later, we have audiences coming in from all over the country and all over the world, with a particular strong population of Australia. I don't know why that is, but we have a lot of people come in from Australia. And they're coming in and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. So those of you who are discovering us, just know that we're that interesting. People get up at 7 o'clock in the morning in Australia to come and join us. So, by the way, if you want to actually be part of the room and if you want to come in and get invited every week, just email me at trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com. So, we went through 4 years of shutdown, and suddenly, the world was starting to be normal again, um, in terms of our having live events and being able to go out and be in public again. And now, for other reasons, the world doesn't seem so normal anymore. Nevertheless, we are here. We are people that celebrate and love the arts. And whatever political leanings people have, I hope that everybody who comes in here into this room does it because you love art, you love theater. I've said this once before, and I've said it many times before, and I'll say it again. Politics is where people go to fight. Art is where people come together to listen. So we are proud to be doing this. We're proud to be offering this weekly opportunity for people to come in and be in a community and talk about the arts and talk about theater. And this is, I think, my 230, I think it's my 236th consecutive conversation since April 17th, 2020. So you'd think it's hard to find things to talk about, but no, the world in the theater is filled with wonderful, wonderful people who just do amazing things, and they do amazing things in the art. They do amazing things for the community. So I want you to meet somebody today who I'm very happy to be getting to know now. Um, if you know what the name of today's discussion is, then it's not any surprise to tell you that in theater, as open-minded and as inclusive as we think we are, there are very few Black producers, and there are even fewer Black female producers. So we have a rarity today. I want you to meet Rara Avis, I think is the Latin expression, the rare and wonderful Jamila Ponton uh, Bragg. Let me find you. Here you are. Replay spotlight there. Um, oh no, no, I just took myself off. I'm going to get used to this guy. So you're watching and you're wondering what the heck's he doing?
It's like we haven't been using Zoom for 4 years.
I know, because Zoom just reinvents itself like we do. And so Zoom reinvents itself, and I'm getting used to things. I'm so like, look, I'm going to places where I'm used to seeing things, and they're suddenly not there. I'm going, wait, where is it now? So, Jamila,
Yes.
welcome to True. I am so happy to have you as part of the community. And just for those of you who don't know, Jamila is actually going to be producing for us. We do a musicals reading series, and she's come on board as a producer for us in January. Keep an eye out for our musicals reading series. I'd love everybody to come and support us on that. Uh, Jamila, tell us a little bit about your background is really in the not-for-profit world,
Correct.
and you made how big of, it sounds like a very big pivot, but how big was the pivot to go into theater?
It
And
was so thank you for the introduction. Thank you for letting me be here this evening and joining this community. It's been great to get introduced to True through Gina and their project. And so I'm just grateful to be here and be able to speak with all of you today. We can start with you and I got connected because of Ron Simons. And Ron was committed to bringing more Black producers and specifically more Black women to the table. And he understood how important producers were in terms of getting what art gets put on the stage, because the producers are the ones who drive it. And so Ron understood the importance of having more voices and more diverse voices, and put his money where his mouth was, and really was a champion of those of us. So I owe everything to him in this transition that I did make. I worked in nonprofit world 15, 20 years, off and on in various capacities, mostly focused on nonprofit, on youth development work, youth leadership work, and came at it from different ways, from direct service to foundation side to being in administration. And kind of just before the pandemic, actually, we'd gone through a personal change where our three living parents all passed away within 3 years of each other. And so I got to a point where, once the fog cleared from all of that and the caregiving and all the things that come with that, got to the point that I could go back full time to nonprofit work. I had been consulting and being able to cobble together some consulting work while I was, taking care of my family. So I had the opportunity to go back, but a friend of mine was, and still is investing in theater. And I had some conversations with her about, what is it that you were doing over here? How does this work? And she's actually how I got to Ron, because she'd invested in a couple of things that Ron had done. Ain't Too Proud to Beg was one of them. And Ron and I hit it off. And Ron, like I said, was so committed to really investing in Black women producers. And he and I had a deal that I was going to be an investor in Blue, his show that he was putting up at the Apollo. But he was going to treat me like a co-producer, and he was going to let me in the room for the meetings, let me be a part on all the emails, all those things, to just see how a show is built. And we had our first ad meeting on March 9th, 2020. And then the world shut down. And so, of course, is this the dumbest thing to be doing right now? After my many runs to Target and everything was closed and all of that. But it actually ended up being the perfect time to learn about the industry, because everybody was home and everybody was willing to do a Zoom and to talk about this work that they weren't able to do right now. So through Ron, got connected to Aaliyah Jones Harvey, Brian Moreland, Stephen Bird, who are a handful of the handful of Black producers right now. And got started to get connected to others. Through them, got to the Women in Producing Network with Nell Nugent, Deborah Barrera-Taylor, Liz Timperman, and just was able to grow my network from that, and just by literally emailing people and calling and saying, hey, Ron said I should email you. Let me know if you have time to Zoom. And they usually did.
Ron was an amazing guy. Those of you who don't know, Ron passed away very unexpectedly and shocked us all. It was a major gut. This has been a year full of gut punches, but that was a big one.
I don't know if you knew this, but he was literally on his way to a show that night when his friend found him.
Really? No, I didn't know that. So guys, just know that Ron Simons is very important to True as well. He's been part of us. He's been a supporter. He was a supporter for many years. I think it goes back to like 2010 or something like that we've known him. And I know that we have another person that he mentored in the room. Janelle Scarborough is actually here. I don't know if Janelle, do you want to say hello?
Yes, Jamila. So it's so wonderful to hear you raise up the name of our brilliant shining star, Ron Simons. And speaking of Zoom rooms, our paths have crossed a couple of times during Ron's salon. Specifically, I recall one for Color Girls when we were all gathering and so, wonderfully raising up Camille, ascending to that level. And so we're just really happy to have you on board, True. And we can't wait on Sunday to continue to praise the name of Ron, because we'll be honoring that tribute. And we hope that you'll be in the room if you can.
I wish I could. I'm sorry that I can't be there on Sunday. But I'm sorry in particular to miss the tribute to Ron. But I'm sorry I can't be there.
I'm going to send you the video that we made of the speech that he made in 2016 it will give you chills of how relevant it is today. What he said in 2016 is exactly what I think he would say today.
I'm
Um,
sure.
yeah.
I'm sure. I have no doubt. And well, Janelle, thank you though for those kind words. I'm glad we're crossing paths again, and
Yeah.
glad that we're in the same room again.
I just want to remind everybody in the room, do put questions or comments in the chat. We encourage that. We like to be interactive to whatever extent possible. I wanted to ask you one thing. Can you talk about some of the specific areas of not-for-profit where you said it was youth?
Youth development work. So I was for about 7 years. I was at Girls Inc. At the national office. So I designed and implemented after-school programs for girls, focused on at the time focused on economic literacy and financial literacy. I'm sorry, and leadership development for girls. And so that was for K through 12. And then spent some time. I don't know if you remember Atlantic Philanthropies. Atlantic Philanthropies was the Spend Down Foundation. It was Chuck Feeney he had founded the duty-free shops, and he had when he sold the company, sold off the duty-free shops, he put the bulk of the profits into a foundation that used to be famous for being an anonymous foundation. They switched over to being a spend down foundation, and they spent $4 billion within 16 years with the idea that they could move the needle on chat problems in the world by throwing massive amounts of money in it in different places across the world. So I spent some time as special assistant to the CEO in that foundation for a while. Was also back at Sesame Workshop. I worked as the educational program manager when they revived the electric company. And so the materials that they had to support the reading goals of the show, my job was to get them out into the world. And then my last substantial consulting work was with the Emma Bowen Foundation. Emma Bowen places high school and college students into internships within the media industry. And so the idea is that these Black and Brown students are placed to build careers behind the camera in sales and media and general management to learn more and to really kind of help diversify that backroom work.
So a couple of questions come to mind.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, I want you to let everybody know about the company that you actually have founded. But I do want to also know, a lot of people come to theater and think they don't know anything and they can't produce. And they don't realize that there are applicable skills
Yes.
that actually come in very handy and can actually make somebody a terrific producer. So I want to ask you, obviously there are differences in the commercial, in the theater world, but what are some of the things that you bring to the table that your other career prepared you for?
I think it's all about project management. It's all about, seeing something that you want to see an end goal and mapping out the steps to get there. I mean, is really what it boiled down to. And when I was considering doing this, you're absolutely right. It is that there was such an overlap with this idea of putting a project together, building the stakeholders in the project, figuring out who would want to see this succeed as well, and what they need to do to contribute to a project. That's what happens when you're building nonprofit, when you're building programs for after school programs. You're putting together the people who can write the curriculum and find the people who can implement it with the kids. It's some of the same thing that you want to find the people who are going to be able to write the music, put them together with the book writer, and come up with this great project at the end. So yeah, that is exactly right. It was when I first started learning more about exactly what a producer does, it was like, hey, I think I can do that. I think I've been doing that all along. Let me just transfer it over here and be lucky enough to marry it with this love of a good story that I have. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so I grew up with August Wilson plays. I've known those plays my whole life. I've been in many, many different iterations of many, many different productions of the cycle. I joke to people, I have a very good friend who's an actor here in Pittsburgh, and we were joking when Fences was on, when they did the big screen version when Denzel and Viola Davis did it. He and I were joking that people were gasping in the audience when they found out that he brought the baby home, and we both were like, "Didn't they read this many times in high school? How come they didn't know that? Why are they gasping?" Because I I knew these stories back and forward, and so backwards and forwards. And so to be able to do something that married this love of theater that was instilled in me very, very young, it now is almost a no-brainer.
Well, I just want to say to everybody in the room, and also people who may be catching us by accident or by intent, I don't know. We have a program, a producer development and mentorship program, and we have a master class and a foundations class. And Jane Dubin, who's here in the room right now, who runs the master class, always asks for a resume. A lot of people come to us and say, I don't really know how to produce. Can I be in the master class? Can I be in a producing class? And they're surprised when we say, send us a business resume, because we're looking for relevant experience that will actually make you very useful in theater. So just as a kind of a personal gripe of mine, I just want to sort of take away the idea that there's theater, which is a mysterious area that nobody can enter, and then there's everything else. It's like, no, theater is just an extension of what you do and who you are and can be. I want to ask you another question. Given your background, it would seem that you must have at some point thought about devoting a company to developing young theater artists, but you chose instead, you tell us.
My focus is women. I think it is women and women's stories, particularly focusing more on women's stories of the global majority, of making sure that their voices are heard. Yes, but within that is important that young actors are still, and younger voices are still part of that. I think one thing as my company, so you asked about my company, as I got to know different people and figured out this theater business kind of thing, I did found my company, JamRock Productions, in May of 2021. And my focus is stories, for women, by women, about women. It really, for me, it's not just about women having to be the main character, but it's also making sure that however they are represented in a story, that they are represented fully, and they're not one-dimensional, they're not tropes, they're not stereotypes, that they're full characters. And I very much will get turned off by any kind of stories that do something that's very, very trite about women, or things that don't fully develop a woman or use them in some way. So it doesn't necessarily mean, like I said, that I'm going to shun a male protagonist in any way, but it's more about the representation of women in a story, and making sure that is they're bringing their full selves, and the characters are fleshed out fully.
So you founded a company, second year of shutdown.
Second year of shutdown, right? Like, why would I do that?
Yeah, why would you do that?
Why would I do that? Honestly, again, that was back to Ron. He connected me to my now attorney, Scott Wilcox. And again, they were really, really focused on pouring into women producers, Black women producers, who are willing to kind of take the chance and take the time to learn. At the same time that was happening, I was also applying for the Prince Fellowship. And so luckily, the first year that I applied, I was a semifinalist. And didn't get advanced to the finalist round. But within 5 minutes of getting that email, Aaron Glick emailed me and said, hey, I really liked your project, let's talk. And so in addition to Ron and others that I got to meet through him, I also got tapped into the Columbia producer kind of network pretty early on. So with Aaron Glick, with Rachel Sussman, Stephen Chakelson, that whole crew up there, I got to know them leading up to applying again for the Prince Fellowship and getting it and being the Prince Fellow. When was I the Prince Fellow? I think it was 2023. I always forget when I was 2022, 23. I always forget when I was.
Oh, okay.
But then
that's okay. I can't remember the date. So,
but yeah, so the second year that I applied, I was able to do that, and then had this wealth of information of being able to take classes at Columbia and be able to learn more of the nuts and bolts of producing, of learning to understand the history of the theaters, the theater owners, the unions, all of those things.
Well, sketch us in a little bit better, because not everybody knows about the program at Columbia.
So
or the Harold Prince Fellowship.
Yeah, so this is the now called the Prince Fellowship. It used to be the Harold, what was it called? The T Fellowship. The idea is that they want to seed more creative producers. So, as we all know, one of the not so great shifts that has been happening is that there are a lot of co-producers in theater who call themselves producers, and they don't really do anything but write some checks and don't really get into the nuts and bolts of building a show and that kind of thing. So, this is something that's been going on for a while, and Hal Prince and many of his colleagues at the time felt that there needed to be some sort of program, some sort of kind of, you know, program that taught people how to be producers. So the idea behind the program is that there's three aspects of it. There is you apply with a project. So, and I'll talk about my project in a second, but you apply with a project, and you are selected based on that project and your interest in being a producer. You have to be somewhat seasoned. You have to be a veteran producer, but you have to have some sort of experience or have been working on your project for a while. The idea is also you get to take classes in the MFA program in the theater management, mostly in the theater management program at Columbia. So the ones where you are learning about how unions work, the theater owners, the history of the theater owners, all the people who've built these theaters, the nonprofit theaters, all of those things, learning how the labor, the unions interact, the ticket sales, all those different. You can take classes in that. But one thing that is really great is that you also get the opportunity to take classes in the other concentrations within the MFA program, so that you can, if you have the time, you can take within the dramaturgy, within the playwriting, within not the acting, within the stage management. And so I took advantage of the fact that I had this opportunity to take these classes for free. So I took a full course load both semesters that I was there. My husband was like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" But I was like, I have the chance to do this. And Stephen likes to talk about how many classes I took.
So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Of everything that you mentioned, for me personally, the thing I would most like to see producers know is dramaturgy.
I agree with that. Not as many, I don't think as many do. In fact, if you make a recommendation, I'll ask you later. I'm looking for a class to take on dramaturgy, because I do think that in order to be a good producer, you have to be able to look at the structure of a musical, of a play, and be able to make sure that you're supporting something that's being built in the right way. And if it's not, being able to ask the questions of your artists of what it is that they need. And I definitely don't think that's part of I think creative producing. And I think a lot of producers don't do that. And I get frustrated when I see some things that make it to Broadway that haven't been questioned in that way.
They do it, but they don't have the background to support what they're trying to achieve. So a lot of producers, I think, are misguided about why a play or a musical works.
You're giving a lot of benefit of the doubt. I don't think there's any, the number that even are doing it incorrectly is small. So you're being very kind.
Yeah, because I've been watching it for. I mean, I'm an old dude, so I've seen a lot of things that have come and gone on Broadway where everybody goes, why?
What?
Don't you understand what I mean, everybody can be armchair quarterbacks, I guess, but oh my God, Bob just used the sports metaphor, guys. Are you ready for that? So I do think, though, that is some basic knowledge that is just escaping people. People want it to work magically. That if I fix this moment and I fix this moment and I fix this moment, these are the three places where I wasn't engaged. Well, look at the bigger picture at some point and see the whole structure of the piece. And it's not like we're trying to get everybody to write within a dramaturgical structure that is just a one size fits all. It's not. I mean, it's very very varied. But I just keep thinking that, why did this producer not know
Right.
that this wasn't working or wasn't engaging the audience? The other thing that I do want to say is that there are different environments that are better and worse for different shows, and not everything would work within the Broadway environment. For the Broadway environment, I do think that there is a good reason to want to make sure that everything is structured in a way that is tight and dramatic and really engaging. But there are a lot of experimental places out there. So if you want to do a piece that is more experimental, there are places to do it. So I think we're talking about what makes a good producer. What makes a good producer is understanding what what the right environment is for the piece that they're producing.
Agreed. That's a big part of it, which I don't think not everything has to go to Broadway. It's where I land.
You hear this every week. Everybody who's in this room, you hear it. Not everything has to go to Broadway. But that said, I still want to do I still want to have a show of mine on Broadway. But I don't know if that's going to ever happen. Um, to follow up on that to everybody, rather than hoping for a Broadway production, what I do now is I just hope that my work will find its way to an audience that appreciates and enjoys it. So
Like that.
I think that's an achievement right there. Um, so let me see something. Owen, has anybody made a comment or anything yet that we can respond to?
Not so far, no.
Okay, so guys, we love to hear from you. JamRock, what made you call it JamRock? I was keep
Oh,
wondering
but
about that.
my birthday is St. Patrick's Day, so it's a play on Shamrock. Jamrock.
So
That,
you're a fellow Pisces.
I'm a Pisces, so
Oh,
it's very personal to me. So it makes sense. It made sense.
that's why we get along so well. We're both
There,
Pisces.
there you go. There you go.
So let's talk a little bit more about producing. What is it that made you decide you wanted to shift your focus and go into producing? You may have touched on this, but I'm not sure whether we directly addressed it.
It was partly looking for something new for myself, realizing, like we said before, that the skills that I'd had were transferable. Talking to different people who were producing, I also knew, as I said, a friend of mine who's an investor and continues to invest. I knew I didn't want to just write checks. I actually wanted to do more. And really learn how to build a show from the beginning. That was the appeal for me for the Prince Fellowship, was finding a way. I'm the kind of person also that if I want to learn something new, I will go back to school. So that was also the appeal, but it really was this idea of finding. I was able to marry something. Like I said, I like a good story and finding ways. And also, we live in New York, and we're very spoiled that we actually have access to all of this. I don't know that it would have been as easy to pivot if I weren't in New York and have all of these resources available.
Let's go back to the distinction you were making between creative producers and investors. Yeah, I wanted to actually piggyback on that and just say absolutely that we've really entered an era where people who are investors are being given the title of producer, and there's a good reason for it. It may not be a good thing, but there's a good reason for it. It's just so much money has to be raised now that producers have taken on tactics that will attract investors. Can you explain to our viewers and our audience in here, what are the things that how does a producer lure a person with money into giving that money? We can just start with the knowledge that producer credit is one of the things.
Certainly producer credit is one of the things I find. I'm still learning about getting, investors and collecting investors. I find that those who care about the arts are the ones that you want, the ones who really want to support good art, who want to make the difference. There are those, I think the ones that are the hardest to get and keep are those who are looking for a return on investment of their money, who aren't willing to invest for the long term. If those who are going to watch the numbers, the weekly grosses every week and see how much that means versus that's not who you want. You want someone who wants to invest in the art. You want to have someone who wants to invest in the writers that you're finding, into the directors who believe in them and want to support their art. I find those are the ones who are willing to say, yes, I will support that. I think one of my best examples that I have is that one of my investors, I was a co-producer on Fat Ham, and one of my investors in Fat Ham happened to end up not being able to come to opening night, which is one of the perks that you get if you're a co-producer. You get to go to the opening night, you get to go to the opening night party. Well, this particular investor wasn't available, so we ended up finding another night to go see Fat Ham. It happened to be the same night of a talkback where James I. Ames, the writer of Fat Ham, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning writer, was having a talkback with the cast. And it also just so happens that I forget Nikki's last name, but Nikki was playing one of the mother in the play, if you saw Fat Ham. Nikki happened to be there. Nikki's roommate in college at Carnegie Mellon was Renee Goldsberry Johnson. And so Renee was the moderator of the talk. Renee and I are good friends. Our boys played baseball together years ago. Our boys are now 15. They played Little League baseball together. So we show up at this talk back. We show up to see the show. We see Renee. We're talking to Renee. We get to introduce him to the investor. Renee moderates the panel. James is there. The investor gets to meet James. Loves the play. Loves James. Loves him so much that I got called about one of James' current projects, Saturday Church, which is actually going to be in spring of 2025 at New York Theater Workshop. Because this investor got to meet James and loved that experience so much, put front money into Saturday Church and is now a front money investor in Saturday Church strictly off the fact that they like James. Those are the kind of investors we all want to find. And those are the ones that, because they care about the art, because they love that kind of experience. Those are the ones that I find are willing to be happy for that. Of course, you want the others who want to show up and who'll be happy to get the credit, get the co-producer credit. But it's constantly talking. One of the things that Ron taught me, honestly, was he said, you always want to be talking about your work, talking about your projects. You never, ever know who's going to be interested in your work. You never, ever know how you're going to find this investor who's going to want to follow and invest in the people that you're spending time investing in as well. So you should always be talking about your projects. You should always be talking about the things that you're doing, because you never know who's going to be interested. He taught me that for sure.
Well, let's circle around to the implied heart of today's interview. Why are there so few Black producers? I'm just going to leave it at that, because you'll fill in some of the details there.
I think it's a little bit what you were getting at before, as well, as that people don't think they can be producers. They realize that they can produce when they have the skill set. I think also, unfortunately, there is a financial barrier to being a producer. You have to find those magical investors who will happen to write a check off of someone that you know, and you have to be in a position to financially be able to support yourself. Many of the producers, I joke with people, many of the producers that I know all have sugar mamas or sugar daddies, and found some rich investor who wanted to do producing on the side and needed somebody who understood how the business worked. Or they work for somebody who's been able to make a hit off of something. And I don't think that many of the Black artists, many of the Black creatives, many don't have access to that as much as others, to be able to say, I want it to be a producer. Most of the young producers that I know have to have another job and have to work at their other job until they are doing enough producing to be able to do something else. Everybody has multiple jobs, of course.
I want to jump in on this, because this is the biggest myth in theater. Everybody thinks that producers are like millionaires.
Rich and famous,
they're
right?
rich, they're millionaires. They're
writing checks left and right. Yes.
They got nothing better to do, so they'll put on a show. It is so untrue. And those of you who don't realize this, I want you to try to grasp this. Producers in a very real sense are the last people to get paid
Yes.
for a show that they're producing. Do you want to explain that one?
So if you think about a show that every show that goes up on Broadway is its own startup company, right? And so you've got to raise the money to get that show running. And so in order to raise the money, you've got to get the co-producers who will do, a fraction of your cost. So co-producer could be raising 250,000, 500,000, whatever, to get to your budget. Let's say you're putting up a play, only a play for $5 million. You've got to get all of these different co-producers to get to the $5 million. Well, when you put the play up, you're starting at negative $5 million. You're starting in the negative to be able to get the show to run, to sell enough tickets to then recoup the money. So even when you see those, and I literally just had this conversation with another producer this week who believes that co-producers should be paid more. And their argument was that I can see the weekly every week. The producers are making so much money. This show that I'm on is making over $1 million a week. I was like, actually, they're not making any money. They're just paying the bills and paying all the people it takes to put that show up. The producers haven't made any money. Now they have their weekly, the weekly fee that the producer gets. It's built into the budgets. But if a show is losing money, that's frequently the first thing that goes, is that producers don't take that weekly to try to help save the budget. So people have to remember that producers don't see a dime of anything until the show recoups. And the shows that recoup, of the shows that were up last season on Broadway, the only ones that are even have a sniff at recouping were Merrily, We Roll Along, Outsiders, and Hell's Kitchen, off the top of my head. But even of those shows, none of them, the investors kind of are getting their money back. The producers aren't making any money off of that. So you're not making money. You think that producers have all this money. They don't. We're not. So
just a reminder to people who do know, and just to teach the people that don't know, one of the things that happens is you raise money to get your show to opening night. After that, you have weekly running costs. So all of the money that's going in has to pay for the running costs, and it's more often than not that people are not making their weekly running costs. So, and the other thing that I think people should understand is that the producers don't start taking their share of the profits until the investors have been paid. So let's explain the difference between general managers and limited partners.
I'm sorry, the lead producers and the general managers.
And no, there are the executive. They're the people that are the lead producers, and they're the general partners.
They're usually the general partners, yeah.
And then there's the limited partners who are basically the investors,
the co-producers or the investors. Yes, right.
Yeah.
And so basically, if you've got the co-producers are getting the investors, or a co-producer can be an investor themselves, and they're the ones actually raising the money to get to the budget, to get to the $5 million budget we said before. So the limited partners are
by the way, $5 million is a bargain, everybody. I want you to know.
That's a fake number. It's a completely fake number. I just saw one of the questions in the chat was, is Sunset Boulevard making money? Sunset Boulevard's budget, I believe, is like $24 million. Because the other thing that you mentioned earlier, like budgets are so out of control right now that even if you see that Sunset Boulevard is weekly grosses are over $1 million, it costs so much to put that show up that it is nowhere near to recouping at all. It's paying its bills.
Back to the Future, that's another one. You're looking at Back to the Future weekly grosses were over $1 million. Their running costs were more than that.
Right. So you got to think about it's just because it looks like they're making a lot of money each week, they're really not. So the lead producers, general partners, if you've got our $5 million example, if you've got, let's say you've got two lead producers on that show, they are splitting the liability at $2.5 million each. So they are each responsible for raising $2.5 million of the budget to get the show up. What they will do is they will find co-producers and who will raise the money on their behalf, and they will give them terms, better terms in order to raise the money. So the idea is that if you've got of your 2.5 that you're raising, if somebody raises $1 million for you, you'll probably give them a 1 for 2. So they'll earn 50 cents on any dollar that they earn. I think I said that right. If you do, if you had someone who would raise $500,000, you could give them 1 for 3 terms. So you're going to give these co-producers terms. And what those terms mean is once their investors get their money back, they're going to earn that much money based on the profits once the show gets into profit. But the show has to earn enough each week to make enough money to pay its bills and to also recoup enough to pay its investors back to then get to the $5 million. I'm oversimplifying this ridiculously, but this is the idea is that you've got to run. And usually when you get these, if you plan to be an investor, if you plan to be a co-producer, you usually will get this recoupment chart that will show you how much money the show needs to make each week in order to get to recoupment. So will it take 20 weeks? Will it take 30 weeks? Will it take 40 weeks based on ticket sales? And it all depends on average ticket price. It all depends on the capacity of the theater that you're in, and also the choice of theater that you're at. That is it Is it a smaller theater, so it's going to take you longer to recoup? Is it a larger theater, so if you fill the theater, you could recoup more quickly, but that means you have to sell those seats, and you have to be, so there's a lot of different factors that go into recouping. I'm using the Sunset Boulevard example. Sunset Boulevard is in a pretty large theater. And it's got a really high average ticket price, right? If I remember from the numbers that I saw this week, and it is making over $1 million. But again, that budget is I think, let's say it's 25 million. I don't think I'm too far off of that. I believe it's $25 million. So even though it's making over $1 million each week, and it's a pretty big cast, so it costs a lot of money to put that up. So let's assume it costs $1 million to run each week, and let's say it's making 1.2 million, it's only making $200,000 a week, and but of that 200,000, it's a drop in the bucket of the $25 million that they had to raise to do that. So that's why it's going to take many, many weeks to claw back to get to that 25 million. And the producers, the co-producers, or the lead producers aren't going to see any profits until they earn all that $25 million back. So lead producers are making they have a weekly fee that they're getting that's built into the budget because they're doing all this work. And they're also, in addition to doing all the fundraising, they're putting the team together, all the different things that are happening, but you're not getting rich off of that.
That's why they say there's no business like show business.
It's the greatest. That was completely oversimplified. I'm sure I got some things wrong.
No, but we don't need it any more complicated than that. I just want people to have the basic understanding. Even people that are out there in YouTube and podcast land who are stumbling upon us. I just want everybody to understand that the producers are unsung heroes in many ways. They really put an enormous lot of effort into something and they get personal satisfaction. They don't necessarily make money. I think let's swing around to the other side of the conversation about investors versus creative producers. What would you say is what is a creative producer?
The idea behind a creative producer is that you care more about giving the artist the space to get their vision, to bring their vision to life. If you are working with a playwright, if you're working with a director, the idea that if they have a play that they want to get up, and I heard a couple of you when you introduced yourselves talking about shows that you want to get to Broadway or off Broadway. I believe that a good creative producer lets the artist lead, and they figure out the way to get that production up to the best of their ability, and figure out what it is that the production needs. I've talked about this with Gina as we're figuring this out for America Tropical. What is it that we need to do to get this what does this reading need to do to get it the best out of this production at this particular stage? I think that a good creative producer is going to help figure that out with the artist. They're going to assemble a team or work with the team that's assembled to figure that out. I think an investor or someone is just going to write a check and just say, hey, I just want to show up and I want you to see if you're going to bring my money back.
To simplify that a little bit even more, an investor or a producer who's basically functioning as a money raiser doesn't have a real right. I don't know if it's too strong to say that, but they really aren't in a position to give creative input to the writers. They shouldn't. It's the lead producer, the creative producer, who's a lead producer, who is basically guiding the writers. The writers don't always know. And I've been in this situation. I had an off-Broadway show, and I was, they wanted me to make changes and do all sorts of things, and I needed guidance. It's like, what isn't working, and how would you fix it? So I think that creative producers are in a position to be able to have that conversation. What's not working, and how can we make this work better? The other side of that is that writers need to establish whether they're open to feedback or not. And the early conversations, whether it's between a writer and a director or a writer and a producer, early conversations crucially must be honest. They really must be a place for you to say what your expectations are of each other. And you have the right as a writer to say, whoa, that's too far. That's too far for me to say yes. And the producer has always got the ability to say, I need to be able to do that. So I think maybe we're not a good fit. Ultimately, we're all hoping that we'll have conversations with these with our these are collaborators, guys, with our collaborators that are positive and instill confidence. I, you need to have confidence in your producer, and your producer really needs to know enough to guide a project. I don't know what the word would be. Just guided wisely, I guess.
Whenever I meet an artist for the first time, I always ask them, what is it? One of the questions we get to, if I do feel like we're bonding or vibing in some way, what is it that you really want to do? And I've gotten a lot of skepticism from artists, writers, and directors that I actually mean that question. I actually do mean that question. I really do view myself as someone who wants to bring their vision to life. You've got to trust that I'm going to do all the things necessary to bring your vision to life. And if I believe that what you want to do was worth my time, is worth me investing my time, then we're going to work together and we're going to figure this out. And I'm really enjoying the artists that I'm working with and the relationships that I'm building with them. I really do focus on younger artists, mostly women, but there are some male artists that I work with as well, of pouring into them and figuring out, what you're working on now might not be your masterpiece, but your masterpiece is coming, but let's get the best out of this.
Owen, I'm going to ask you to give us some of the questions. I know that Joel asked a very interesting question.
Yeah, I was going to start with that one. Joel
Okay.
Bailey asking, you mentioned you or slash Jamrock are driven to, attracted to stories by, for, and about women. Within that subset, are there other aspects or attributes to a story that you are drawn to?
I really just like a good story. I like something that is going to draw you in. I really like family-based stories that talk about that explore day-to-day things that are happening. The very classic mother-daughter, father-daughter, father-son stories, a good love story, things that's built around community. If you have a good story, I'm going to get drawn in. And you've built the story well, or I see something in the story that's there, or a good idea that we're going to explore together. But I can't say that like I said, just because I do focus on women stories about women, like I said before, it doesn't necessarily have to be that the woman is the protagonist or is that's it. As long as women are represented in a multidimensional way, I'm going to be attracted to the story as well.
The only thing I want to say is a qualification there to qualify this a little bit is that there are great stories that are not told well. So yeah. The story is key. I learned something from Richard Barr. Richard Barr was the president of the Broadway League, and he was the lead producer of Sweeney Todd, and he was a friend of mine. And I had him over for dinner, and I asked him what he was working on, and he started talking to me about this Penny Dreadful, and it was being adapted into a musical, and it was about a man who kills people and a woman that bakes them into pies. And I sat there thinking, this man has lost his mind. Why is he? What is a musical about that? So flash forward, I see the show and I just jump to my feet and I'm just screaming and shouting and just loving it. It's not always the idea, but it's the execution. So story is huge, but execution is also very, very
not only
important.
Execution. I saw a play last week for the first time, and I walked away. It was the first time that I had the experience of the actors were not chosen well, and the story was great, but the actors were not good enough to get the best out of the story. And so that was the first time I was like, so it's all these different pieces that you've got to figure out together to get the best thing. But that was the first time I was like, you're losing, this is a beautiful story and it's really well done, but you're losing so much of the story because this particular actor who's the center of it is not good enough to handle all of the different aspects of this.
That as a writer, I've learned that lesson as well, because I've seen plays of mine done by different casts, and it's a different play. Each time it's just, there's an ensemble piece that I wrote, and it's like, oh, it really is this person's story. And then the next time I see it, it's like, oh no, this story is really the one that jumped out this time.
And the other part of that is I've worked a couple of projects that I'm working on. I understand the importance of, we talked about before, my fellowship project for the Prince Fellow was The Blacks. I have the rights to The Blacks, which is a John Jeunet play that was originally done in 1961. The original cast was Cicely Tyson, James Earl Jones, Maya Angelou, Roscoe Lee Brown,
Amazing.
Jr. When they were all babies. It's an insane cast. So I have the rights.
It's an insane play. Let it be said.
Right. In classical. In fact, back to Ron, Classical Theater of Harlem did the play in 2003, and Ron was part of that cast. And it's a really difficult play. John Janae, so many layers to it. It's really hard. And I remember Ron telling me, he was like, a month. It took me a month to recover from that play, and there were days that I still didn't know what was going on. It's just a really difficult play. And so we've done a lot of development work. My Prince Fellowship project was the original. The Janae estate granted me permission to do a new translation of the play. The original play was in French. And so my fellowship project was to do a new translation of the play. And so we've been able to do, to date, we've been able to do 3 readings of the play. And I've been lucky enough, I got to know Wendell Pierce when I was a co-producer on Death of a Salesman. And he is, if you know anything about Wendell went to Juilliard. He is a very much just a student of the theater. Forget The Wire and all the things that he does. He is a student of the theater. And so he's very, very interested. He's joined me as a consulting producer on this, and he has lent his Rolodex for us to have access to his vast Rolodex of actors to be able to, as we figure this play out. And I've learned the importance of having, because this is such a complex play, the importance of having an actor who is well trained, and so you need a theater trained actor who's willing to kind of work through the difficult language and figure out what they need to get into their body. Kara Young has been able to be in 2 of the 3 readings that we've done, and watching Kara talk to the translator and talk about the word choice that he made for a particular phrase, and then watch her get that into her body to get it out, is just nothing like it. And so that's also, I've learned the importance of that.
Owen, next up.
Next up is from Donald Hall, who asks if video streaming could help pay back the costs on these sort of.
It can, but you still have to get up the show and still get the show up to be able to do the video streaming. And then the revenue, my understanding is the revenue on that is not lucrative enough to make too much of a difference in your budget, but it can make a difference if it's part of the touring package, or if it's something. I know that the National Theater, when they do it and they have their National Theater at Home, which they were able to develop during the pandemic, they've been able to with subscription and things, to be able to do something, but it's not as much. It doesn't call back as much as you would think that it would.
Next up, Owen.
We've got a question from Sue saying, touring seems very important. Does a small cast and unit set help?
Yes. Yes and yes. Touring is very important. If you can get your show successful enough to be able to get on tour, touring can help. And also the smaller the set, the smaller the cast that you can create. I think the best example is Six. Six is, as you can see every week, Six is one of those hits that's been able to keep on going. I want to say they're in their 3rd or 4th season now. If you've seen it, there are 6 women all in the same costumes the whole time. The band is on stage, and that's them telling the story of these 6 wives, right? And it tours well. It's great because it's an easy compact to make the really nice costumes. Yes, so that can help, but you got to get to the point to get to a tour to be able to do that. I'm lucky enough that I was a co-producer on The Wiz last year, and so it is mounting a tour, and so I'm lucky to be in the tour for that.
Owen, are there any more questions? Because I have
no questions. There's a RK Green, doing some math. Sunset Boulevard, week 25, 1,600 seats, 8 performances a week. Last week,
leave it to RK, of course.
What about 1.8 million while running costs over 1 million? It's going to take a long time. I think Jane says it breaks even at 1.2 million. In order to so.
Well, at the beginning of that, I had a question I was going to ask Jamila, and now I have to remember what it was. I was starting to say I've got something controversial I wanted to also bring into the conversation, and I should have written it down. All right.
I had a question, just a quick question. I wondered if you're looking at original dramas, I have a play about Sojourner Truth
Yeah, no,
called Dusk of Egypt.
yes.
We have two pieces in our community gathering today about
Yes.
Sojourner Truth.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I
Uh-huh.
am very, very interested in
Uh-huh.
lifting up stories about the Black American experience. I very much believe that our story is not all meant to be oppression. It's not all meant to be about the struggle. We know that we've struggled in this country, but there are joy. I think one of the best things that I heard Barry Jenkins when he was making the Underground Railroad, Colson Whitehead's book, when he did the series that he did on Amazon, one of the quotes that he made about it was that in slavery there were children that were born, and they're children, and somebody had to watch those children, and if that didn't happen, none of us would exist. And so there had to be some joy in those children for them to get to escape and to do that. And that's what you want to talk about. You want to talk about the joy. You want to talk about the great things that have happened. I have a list of like Black experiences and the joy in Black experiences that I would like to find ways to get to this the stage. But yes, and I don't think that we lift up enough all of the different the different contributions along the way. One of the things that I loved about Suffs, whether you loved it or hated it, I love that Ida B. Wells is in the conversation now and that people know more about her.
Exactly. Yeah, this is about a little known true story of a young Sojourner Truth.
Oh, nice.
And her fight to rescue her son.
Can I ask the question?
Yeah,
I got my question.
Sure.
I wanted to shift this a little bit around. We've already established the fact that there aren't that many Black producers, and we've already established the fact that you are the rare Black female producer. So it's hard enough. It's hard enough for you to be Black and try to do this. What does being a woman bring to the table too? What other frustrations are there?
I think it's a little bit of what I was saying before. It's the representation of women in the stories. It's so easy to do I find that if you look at stories, it's so much easier to fall into the stereotypical women supporting the man, or falling into the mom trap, or not any different aspects of a woman.
Well, I think what I was thinking about, because I've asked this question from time to time to women producers. Do you sense that there's any difference in how you're viewed as a woman in the room versus the men?
For sure. Particularly I've been in rooms where I will answer a question and someone will look to the man in the room and ask the follow-up question to him. I've been, because this is such a very male-dominated space, I have found that I've been very lucky that we've talked about this before, I've had some very good mentors in Kristen Caskey and Sue Frost, who I've been able to kind of make sure that I'm riding their coattails and being a part of the wonderful things that they've been able to do, and learning from them and how to navigate, and being able, honestly, I can give this example too. I was in the way that this industry is, it is sometimes about name dropping. And I'm in a negotiation for a play that I'm working on, and the lawyer who was representing the writers, who were men, but the lawyer was them, and he was trying to steamroll me on the deal, and try to steamroll me on there are 3 writers that are part of it, and they were really working hard to get them equal compensation. But my pushback was, this is just one play. They've got to figure that out among themselves. And he kept trying to steamroll me. And I really had to come with name dropping of the mentors of the Prince Fellowship Project. And I was like, no, Jeffrey Seller taught me that when you do this, this, and this, he was this, and this. And that was when he backed up off me, when I could name drop, and when I could push back the male names. But I don't take for granted that because of the fellowship and because of the work that I've been able to do, and I have those relationships, that I can do that. But yes, I am viewed differently. And until I know what the levers are for you to represent, to want to respect me, I've also been advised sometimes that, you know what, if you're going to treat me like this, I'm going to walk away from this. And sometimes that is the leverage that I have, that with in deals and different things. But yes, I definitely feel a difference.
Yeah, I wanted to get that point made. Are we good now? Owen, I think
we have a lot more questions though.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you have the time?
Tina
Do you have the time, Jamila?
Oh yeah.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Cool. Tita Antares asks, what have you learned about marketing, but specifically about aligning messages with the creative group, potential artists, themes, and potential women and BIPOC audiences?
Marketing is really important and really hard, particularly right now, given how hard it is to get audiences into getting butts and seats, honestly. And so it's having the things that used to work for shows, the subway ads, the mailers, that all of that doesn't work the way that it used to. It takes a combination of things, digital ads, getting in TikTok, getting in on the Instagram, in the reels and the different things, getting those ads up, getting the mailers out, figuring out what subway, what taxi ads you need, what zip code you need to target. All of those things all go into now marketing a show, and you have to just keep throwing. The example that keeps coming up is you got to throw as much spaghetti at the wall and figure out what sticks. And it's going to be different for every show. It's going to be different for what works. Figuring out how you're going to get some sort of viral buzz around it. What's going to take on all those things. It's really hard right now.
Have you worked at all with Marcia Pendleton?
Yes, I've been grateful to work with Marcia and the work that she's done. I think she'll be honest with you about this too. And Aletha Stevens is who I've also been able to.
Well, I'm going to meet her on Sunday.
Oh yes, that's right. So she and I actually just had lunch on Monday. Marcia will tell you some of the things that she was able to do and to get audiences out, pre-pandemic or 10 years ago, don't work as well anymore. And so some of them still do work, and sometimes you do have to meet people there, but some of them you got to do even more of that and that grind to get people out. But yes, Marcia is a legend and was very, very good at getting audiences out. Is very good.
And a former True board member.
Oh, look at that.
Owen, next up.
Crystal asks, as a playwright/actress, should I know the budget/costs of a play I want produced when approaching a producer?
Yes and no. I think that you should have, I don't know that you need to know a simple number. I think more importantly, as a playwright, I think it's important to know what you need to get this up. What do you think this looks like? What do you think this feels like? What are the artists that you need to do that? And the producer will work with you to see what is and what isn't possible. If you want to be an well-educated playwright, then yes, you should know that. And I think actually one example that I just was just given to me, a musical that's about to go up, the director actually met with the production designer and really sat down and figured out where they could cut costs and what was able to be negotiated in order to bring the budget down that would still work with his vision. And so that's more of how you would approach it. I don't think that you necessarily need to know the budget, but you do need to know what you need in order to bring it to life, and where you can cut costs, or where you can or can't compromise.
Another question that always comes up for writers is how big a cast is a big cast, how big a cast is doable. And we've talked a lot about this. I think, of course, there's a sweet spot for everybody. Every producer wants to do a two-hander. It's just the least expensive. But I know for off-Broadway, it's really hard to do anything that's more than 8 characters.
8 is the off-Broadway tipping point. I want to say 12 to 15 can be the big musical tipping point for a larger cast. I think that's becoming the point, which is so ridiculous that 20 million is kind of the baseline right now, which is ridiculous. But like getting below the 20 million, you've done something, which sounds crazy, but
God bless this business.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Oh my goodness. Owen?
Yep. Follow up on touring.
Let me ask Tina. Tina, did that answer your question? Was if there's anything else that you want to clarify, just let us know.
I had a follow up. Just what about partnering with organizations that can bring out audience?
That is certainly helpful, and I think that a lot of producers are doing that now. I know that, for instance, Buena Vista Social Club that's coming in the spring, they have a lot of community partners that they're working to bring out a lot of the Cuban and Latino audiences, communities in the city, to try to get them out. So yes, that is something that it can help. It's again part of throw whatever works at the wall. Is that going to fill the house 80% every week? We don't know.
We have no lack of spaghetti.
Right, we're going to find whatever can work, because that's going to give you 80% in the seats to be able to, and to also, are you getting those in there? They're going to pay a full price. They're not trying to get discount tickets to keep your average ticket price high, to try to get to your recoupment and all those things.
Next up.
This is the last one I have. This is a follow-up on touring from Sue. Can a show tour or appear regionally to demonstrate audience appeal and then come to New York City?
That is one model that's being explored a little bit more. I know that Come From Away did that years ago. Again, being able to talk to Sue Frost about this, is that they think they did 3 different out of town stops leading into Broadway. We were able to build buzz around it. Part of that strategy was because it was about 9/11, wanting to kind of, test the waters of, can they do a show about 9/11? The Wiz, the model of the Wiz that they just did this last time was that they did a 12-city tour ahead of time, leading into the Broadway, and they capitalized both of those together, doing the 12-city and the Broadway run did that all together. And so that was successful. And I know that a lot of other producers are starting to look at that model. It does mean that you have to, you have to deal with the cost of putting it in each city. You have to deal with the transfer costs. I know one of the things that ended up being more expensive than was expected was actually going from city to city and adjusting to each stage. Each stage is different. Each stage is a different size. You have to be able to rehearse and be able to make sure that everything fits like you need it to fit. So you have to take that in consideration, but it is a model. If you Google the Wiz touring or something like that, there were a couple articles that went out about this being a possible new model of a way to try to get costs or to make money on some of these shows, because touring can be so successful. But to be honest, I think if you look at the reviews of The Wiz, one of the criticisms of The Wiz was that it was not built for Broadway. It looked like a touring show. And so that was a criticism of it when it was on Broadway. I didn't agree with that, but that was one of the criticisms of that. So you have to deal with that too.
So that's all of our questions?
That's all I've got.
I wanted to ask you one other thing.
You got so much in your head. You got so much in your head with the gala.
What was it? It was another controversial sort of thing that I wanted to ask you. You know what? I'm just gonna wind up now. I'm gonna do my thank you to my YouTube audience, and I'm just gonna thank you right now, Jamila, for being a part of us and being with us today. I'm going to, you can stay a little, if you can stay a little. I know that people will just want to say hello and ask you questions. Sure. And this is me just winding up now for YouTube and the podcasts. Thank you all for being with us today. I'm glad that some of you out there found us. It surprises me that sometimes we get 50 or 60 views, and sometimes we get 5,000 views on YouTube, and I don't know exactly how to predict that. So if 5,000 of you are finding us, I want you to know that you can be part of the room. And as I said at the beginning, please just email me at trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com, and I'll invite you to the future meetings. We have another producer, a Broadway producer, Michael Alden. But the thing that's a little interesting a little different about Michael is Michael has really spent half his life in theater and half his life in film. So we're going to talk about the differences between producing for film and theater next week. Then we have Beowulf Borit, who was supposed to be with us last week, swears he's going to have his voice back, and he's going to come on and he's going to talk about his career as a theater designer. So we got a lot of cool, interesting things coming up. So I hope you guys will come back and join us again. And I want to thank the people in the room, the true community. April 17th, 2020, this was just a random thought. And I never thought I was going to be doing it 235 times. Or 36. I don't know. I've lost count. So here we are, and we're doing this, and we're here, and we encourage anybody who is interested in theater to become part of our community. There's always a space for you in our community. And see you next week, I hope. That's it. Thanks.